what the report is and to address his questions. And Brian Champion has that presentation ready.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Brian Champion, the Transportation Planning Manager for the city. I've just prepared a few slides to talk about the SRTP, the Short Range Transit Plan for the transit service. What you're seeing here is a chart with passenger trips. It's formatted with passenger trips listed along the Y or the vertical axis on the left, and fiscal years as it appears on the X or horizontal axis on the bottom. Passenger trips in fiscal year 2009 and 10 totaled 165,000. As anticipated, passenger trips were impacted by the fare increase and service reduction in July 2010, with passenger trips declining by almost 8%, or about 12,500 trips. Fortunately, passenger trips have increased each year since then, with increases of 1% in fiscal year 11-12, 6% in 12-13, 4% in 13-14, with 13-14 being a good year for the Corona Cruiser in two respects. First, surpassing total passenger trips that were set in 2009 and 10 before the service reduction and fare increase. And that also represents a record-setting year for us. Passenger trips are estimated at about 169,600, or a little less than 0.1% shy of last year. That equates to about 145 trips less this year than last year. We are projecting a slight increase in passenger trips for next year, and we're basing this increase on some proposed improvements that I'll highlight in a few slides. This chart breaks down the same passenger trips, but at the route level by the red and blue line. The red line had historically carried more passengers than the blue line, but that changed in fiscal year 11-12. This tracks back to the service reduction, as the early morning and later evening trips that were trimmed to reduce service, reduce costs, were more productive on the red line than the blue line. Fortunately, we've added back some early morning red line service in fiscal year 13-14, and that, you can see, contributed to the year-over-year increase. So that did help with our passenger trips and productivity. Next slide. The chart overlaid here shows the proportion of students riding the Corona Cruiser. Students made up about 8% of our cruiser passengers in fiscal year 10-11, which equates to about 12,000 passenger trips. That doubled the next year to 17%, increased again to 24% in 12-13. The student ridership peaked last year at about 26% of all of our riders being students, and that equates to about 44,000 passenger trips. We anticipate students will continue to make up about a quarter of our ridership. We've added a second bus to the morning and afternoon blue line and a second bus to the afternoon red line just to accommodate all the passengers. So we couldn't fit all the students in one bus, so we've doubled up on those trips. We do plan on drawing back those doubled buses when we put in service our new low-floor buses in December. Next one. This graph plots dial-a-ride trips, and you can see it has a similar trend to the Corona Cruiser, with a decrease in fiscal year 10-11. That was about a 10% decrease. However, we had year-over-year increases since, peaking in 13-14 at just over 68,800 passenger trips. That, again, was a record-setting year. We are estimating that passenger trips will decline by about 3.6% this year. Not exactly sure if this reflects a change in demographics, but we'll be watching this trend over time. General public trips represent about 12%. And typically on an average day, we carry about 20 passengers, 20 students on Dial-A-Ride each day. Captured in the short-range transit plan for next year, we do plan on adjusting trip times. This year we've experienced a challenge meeting the schedule with all the congestion, lane drops, lane minimizations. And then once a bus falls behind, it's very difficult to catch it back up. So if a trip takes 65 minutes to complete now instead of the published trip time of 60 minutes as it appears in the schedule, we're going to change that to 65 minutes. We want to reflect that in the schedule. While this won't look like additional service to passengers, they should see a more reliable bus. The bus will be on time. We also have 2 capital projects budgeted for next year. We'll be installing solar-powered lighting at approximately 20 bus stops throughout the city. That's pole-mounted, passenger-activated. And we'll be purchasing 6 replacement Dial-A-Ride buses. And both of those capital projects are grant-funded. And then although not explicitly listed in the short-range transit plan, we do plan on making 2 minor route adjustments. The first one here is on the blue line. This is where Main and Magnolia merge diagonally across from South Hills Church at the Corona Community Villas. We make approximately 24 trips there each day. And currently, we enter the property on the south side of the building, we loop around, the bus stop is on the west side of the building, then we come back around on the main and proceed on our way. It's not a high ridership stop, about 7 passengers per day, but it takes about a minute to a minute and a half to make that trip, and the bus driver can't see if there's anyone at the stop. So if no one has indicated to the driver that they want to get off, 24 times a day we're making that loop. So what we are proposing, and I met with the residents at this senior housing development, explained our motivation to move the stop just in front of their building. You can see it's labeled here on Main. They were okay with it. They understood why we were doing it, and so we'll implement that change. That should save at least 24 minutes a day on the schedule. The next proposed reroute is at the Walmart on Ontario in California. Last month we met with Walmart to discuss a proposed relocation of the stop. Currently the bus stop is in front of the main entrance, but that requires us to enter and exit Walmart onto California. And that left turn as we exit takes anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes in the afternoon when there's a lot of congestion. So what we're proposing is to relocate the stop to the Garden Center. Again, this is a conceptual plan. We haven't firmed this up with Walmart. But that would also offer some significant schedule savings. Looking forward to years 2 and 3 in the short-range transit plan, in fiscal year 16-17, we're proposing to replace all the advertising shelters in town. They've reached their useful life. They'll continue to support advertising, and then we'll replace 4 Dial-A-Ride buses that year also. The last year of our plan, we will continue with our bus stop improvement, making each stop ADA accessible. And we are considering taking some service from RTA's Route 1, and we'll run it as a Corona Cruiser service. And that would connect the North Main station to the West Corona station. In their comprehensive operational analysis, they have Route 1 stopping at Smith Street on 6th, and we'll continue to provide that service for residents and passengers on Route 1 to meet most of the trains in West Corona. And that completes my presentation.
Thank you. Did you push a button, Dick?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm just
Question.
pleased with the ridership from the students, I know that there's quite a concern. Has there been any additional requests to change for the schools, or we're working with the school district to make sure that we can meet some of those needs? Because I know I hear a lot from the Cerro de Oro area about getting their students to Corona High and Corona Fundamental from there.
Yes, we coordinated with my colleague at the district. First, we wanted to establish that the bell schedule wouldn't change as we're moving forward with changing our schedule. We don't propose any more service. We have approached the district that if they have a route that they no longer serve that does need some attention, that if we could work out an arrangement where it's a full cost recovery for us, that we could take on more service. It would have to be open to the public. We can't replicate school service, but that is something that we could do in the future.
And also, I was glad to see about the Corona Villas, because I know we don't make that much concessions for the other senior housing, that we have to be careful when we look like we're favoring one or the other. So I was pleased to have that bus stop moved. And when you said you haven't talked to Walmart, is that only because we have to get permission to go into the garden area, or?
Yes.
Because they don't do any compensation to have a stop there, do they?
No, they don't. They do accommodate our bus. We propose to relocate there so we could avoid that unprotected left turn onto California. But it would require them to surrender 5 to 6 parking stalls and make some infrastructure improvements so we could drop the wheelchair lift on a level platform.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a couple questions. What age students are you talking about? Is it
This is mostly middle to high school students.
okay?
Yeah, so
Is there an age limit for it as far as how young they can be? Or?
no, not really. If they look to be older than a senior at school, we'll ask for a student ID. But no, typically there's no required identification.
Okay, and then just another question about you mentioned about the change in demographics, lowering ridership. Who uses this? I mean, outside of you mentioned the students, and what would account for that?
Well, for Dial-A-Ride, 83% of our passengers are seniors and persons with disability. That's our
Okay.
target audience. The general public makes up about 12% of our ridership. We do carry passengers to and from Metrolink stations, relatively small, less than 3%. And children make up less than 1%.
Okay.
That's our target audience.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the 3 items we could take as one motion, if we have a motion.
Actually, on that first item, can we just make sure we note for the record that the action is going to be approving 1A through C, that optional D is not being utilized. So if we can note for the record, that's item 3C1. You're acting on action items A, B, and C.
Okay. With that noted, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please vote. Thank you.